Hello, everybody. It's been a long time coming. We haven't had an episode in quite some time, and I am so excited to have a return episode, have a return season back with somebody that I really want you to meet. Current Miss Nutmeg 2026, former top 5 contender of Miss Connecticut, the founder of the Mariposa Project, and a wonderful mental health advocate, Michaela Childs, hanging out with us today. Michaela, thank you for being here.
It's lovely to be here. I'm excited.
Yeah, it's going to be terrific. We've had several conversations back and forth, all about ways that, White Flag and the Mariposa Project and you and I and the team are going to be able to do some wonderful things in the world of mental health. Just some of the things I've learned about you have been just really inspiring to hear, especially in the pageantry industry, and the things that you're trying to do there. And I would love for people to get to know you. So just tell us a little bit about yourself.
So, I actually didn't start doing pageants until I was in college, and it honestly lines up pretty perfectly with my mental health journey. I didn't realize that a lot of what I went through in my childhood was considered trauma, and so I was dealing with all these mental health lows while simultaneously trying to figure out a way to pay for college. And so, not only did I find that I had multiple mental health diagnoses, I ended up getting PTSD and MDD diagnoses, but as well as I found that there's service-based scholarship within pageantry, especially in the Miss America organization. And so I started competing, and initially I didn't feel comfortable sharing my story, but after a little while, I felt more comfortable showing people the more vulnerable side of me, mainly because I wanted to show other people that they belong in pageantry. I think there's this idea that people with PTSD are less capable, and it's this stigmatized ideal that's completely false. And so I wanted to be able to show people that not only can you overcome trauma, but you can do exactly what you want to do and exactly what your peers are doing. Nothing's going to limit you from that.
Yeah, we abide by the same philosophy. Very specifically, for a long time, it was people with mental struggles or mental illnesses are people too, which is great. But part of equality is beyond just having people accept that other people are human beings and branching
Yeah.
that success is stemmed in this same group of
Yeah.
people.
I like that you brought that up actually, because Miss America Opportunity has these points to the crown, and one of them is success. And that was something that I feel like still carries very much in my why, as why I compete, why I do my advocacy. But it's mainly because success is self defined. And so, sure, early on in my journey, my successes were smaller, but as I go and accomplish more and I have the changes that I need to make in my day to day in managing my mental health, it looks very differently and it grows along with me.
I am very curious because we're very open, both in our community and even on this podcast. How much of your story you'd be willing to share about what you now know as trauma, as opposed to what was the old normal.
Legally, I can't go into specifics, but what I will say is I faced a lot of violence when I was a child, and I only recognize that as my norm. When you are raised a certain way in a certain environment, that becomes all that you know. And
Yeah.
so I thought this was just the normal for everyone. And eventually, fledging into being an adult and going into college, the more you hear more people's perspective and more people's upbringing, and you start to understand like what's typical and what's not. And so that was, I'd say, the biggest element in my PTSD is just the amount of violence, but I will say that there's been this discrepancy because I did wrestle for 8 years, and many people think that you can't do things alongside being a survivor of violent abuse. And in actuality, like, you can really do anything that you want to do, and a lot of people don't recognize in wrestling, there's rules. And so a
Yeah.
lot of people were like, "Are you perpetuating this violent abuse cycle by participating in wrestling?" And I was like, "I can't even lock my hands around a waist in high school in folk style. I doubt that that is ever going to perpetuate a violent cycle."
Right, right. That's that, that's a pretty big reach.
Yeah,
you know?
100%. Yeah.
Yeah. And I noticed that those kind of like what ifs and what ands really focus in on mental health. You don't see it as much in other things, but if it involves mental health in any way, if they feel like there's any damaged goods at all,
Yeah.
there have to be like these numbers of checks and balances. And well, are can they do that? Is that all right? Is it going to be a big deal?
Mhm.
Um, with everything,
Yeah.
even in sports.
Yeah, especially coming from an abusive situation and then going into my adulthood, I think people do view me as fragile. And so, like, they feel like they need to protect me in some way. When in actuality, growing out of that, I recognize the signs and I can apply that going forward. I don't need other people necessarily to protect me. That I need a support system. I need people who are going to be there if I say, "Hey, this is how I need you to support me." But a lot of people, I think, will make up this idea in their head of how to best protect someone and kinda do it against their will, if that
Mm,
makes sense. So, that was definitely something I noticed a lot, was a lot of people kind of trying to be my white knight,
all right. Yeah.
unsuccessfully.
Yeah. And that's stems from a lot of a lack of education.
Mhm.
I mean, it's the same thing that people do for anything when they're not sure of how to fix a problem or whether or not something is safe or unsafe. That they'll just blanket over it as quickly as possible,
Yeah.
out of concern that they're not gonna do the specific right thing.
Mhm.
So they'll just they'll smother as much as possible.
Yeah.
Uh, you see it a lot. That's part of why advocacy and education is so important because uh, less is more in a lot of scenarios. You know.
Agreed, especially on, like, an interpersonal level. I think people don't understand that it takes a lot of power to admit when you need to get help, and then a big part of implementing those habits on an individual level is about knowing when to recognize the signs and knowing how to prevent putting yourself in a dangerous situation from the get-go. So it kinda creates, like, this shaky idea of, like, "Am I able to protect myself? Well, I don't know because I have people coming in and basically trying to save me. So where does my voice come in?" And I think that a lot of that is it's important to recognize that people who are survivors of abuse are allowed to stand their ground with you and be like, "Hey, like I get that you have good intentions, but this is how it's coming across and I'm going to set a boundary here where like I protect myself and you can be there to support me, but you are not allowed to bleed into my personal life and try and rule certain elements of my personal life."
Yeah. I don't need saving. Thank you,
Mhm.
ma'am. Yeah, absolutely. I've got so many questions for you. What would you say to those out there that are maybe realizing this on their own or haven't even begun to kind of, disseminate that information, regardless of what resources they have, whether it's them by themselves or they have people around them, what does that transition look like? How do you tackle that for the first time in those first stages?
A big part of it is recognizing that you don't deserve the treatment that is hostile, that is demeaning, and a lot of people, especially growing up, you only know what you've been around, so you tend to think that that's what you're worth, but go out into other social situations in the world, see how other people treat you. It shouldn't be that vastly different from the people at home, from the people close to you. Those people should also be treating you with care and love, and it shouldn't be so conditional. I get that in some environments, like friendships, if you're harmful to them, the condition is that they are not going to be your friend anymore. But past that, there shouldn't be qualities to you that are worthy of hate and of violence. And so, really looking in and reflecting on how you are treated and how you deserve to be treated instead is a big part of dismantling this idea that you're deserving of abuse.
There are no qualities of you that are worthy of hate.
Mhm.
Put that shit on a mug right
Literally.
now. Right now.
Literally.
That's fantastic. I love that. Because that's even not to an extreme like what you or someone else may have gone through in any capacity.
Mhm.
Um, there's no version of you that deserves mistreatment at all.
Mhm.
Even afterwards, in any degree of what someone may have experienced mistreatment, many of us choose to not be vulnerable on purpose, because well, I'm not going to get burned again,
Yeah.
you know, as if to realize that you were getting burned at all by someone that you haven't been vulnerable with yet wouldn't be a sign. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? It's a gift in and of itself to be able to recognize the difference.
That avoidance too, it's a sign of trauma, and
Yeah.
there's a lot of different ways that you respond to it. I literally was sitting with my therapist this week, going over all of the categories of symptoms because 'cause I'd heard the list before, but I didn't really recognize the overarching categories that they're in, and there's literally a whole section of avoidance. You'll avoid people, places, things that remind you of it, and that's really difficult because then when you believe all these hateful things about yourself and all these negative things about yourself, any reminder of that, you just push against, and a lot of them are also rooted in, like, good memories, so it doesn't matter the
Mhm.
moment they've touched anything negative in your life, then you start to avoid it, so I've had to consciously fight against that.
Let's switch gears because I have a lot of questions that I want your opinion on. You're doing such good work in the pageantry industry. We've talked about it, seeing some of the changes and growth that you want to see in the culture. Chesley Chris, commits suicide very recently. In the past several years. In that same window of time, you have Noriella Voigt and Uma Sophia, who basically whistleblow a whole section of this industry on the abuse, not just within the teen circuits, but the standard Miss America circuits as well. And for a lot of us that were kind of following that story, felt there was a very big hollow nothing that came of all that. That with gag orders and restraining orders, and their moms having to speak out by proxy, and what felt like a really supercharged campaign for change that then was followed up with kind of a lot of the standard marketing techniques of, we're going to get at them, we're going to do good and make some changes, and then nothing came of that. As someone that's in it, that's around this industry every day, you know, that was a lot of really impactful, hurtful things that happened in a 3 to 5 year window. As someone that's an advocate for change, what do you make of all that? What do you feel should have been different, or still needs to happen?
I will say I am blessed to be in a different system that I think has a lot more in place to protect the individual. The Miss America organization, I think there's a lot of tiers of hierarchical power to make sure that like there's buffers like at the local level, at the state level, to make sure that your contestants or delegates, sorry, I think that's the word we're using now, are best protected. So that is the first thing. But also the second thing is I think dismantling this idea that a title's gonna save your life, that seems really dramatic, but hear me out, I'll get there. Um, so I think a lot of people go into things like their pageant interview with this really riveting story, and that's great. But the getting this title and damaging yourself possibly by triggering yourself in the interview room is not going to save you from your circumstances. Only you are able to put in the work in your mental health journey to know what's going to work for you. So I think a lot of people go into certain stages of competition thinking that, well, if I get this local title, then a lot of my stress is going to be gone. And that's not true. And so I think that's an element that I see more on the local level and, sometimes state level that can be harmful, and so knowing how to professionally have boundaries, like in my interview, I kinda similar to this, I don't disclose the nitty-gritty details that are triggering to me and possibly secondhand traumatizing other people. I tell what I'm comfortable with and what I think is appropriate for the audience, and know what I've put in the work. I don't need the outside validation that, well, this was how bad things were then, and this is how good things are now. I see that journey and I see the work that I've put in, and I don't need that outer validation from other people. So that's a big one. I will say with a lot of the resignations and, especially the situation with the unfortunate loss of a national title holder, a lot of that was based in perfectionism, and so that's something I'm dismantling, on a personal level as well, and I think that you guys getting involved too with the Miss Connecticut organization would really help. Just acknowledging that you don't have to feel perfect all the time, you don't have to feel great, like, things about pageants, really any competition, is hard and it's stressful. And it's okay to admit that, hey, I'm feeling really bad anxiety today. How can I best manage this? And looking to your peers, looking to those close to you. Instead of this idea that you need to keep up an image that is unrealistic. I think that the Miss America opportunity is really good at pushing forward authenticity and showing that there are good days and there are bad days. And especially with my platform, I think that that is a good segue into showing people that as a title holder, these are the things that I do to make sure that I'm at my best for competing, for social interactions, for public appearances. But then also, there are days that are harder than others. And these are the tools that I use to get through it. And more of an educational basis rather than this ideal of what I need to look like to the public.
I'm very curious now because I agree with everything that you said. I agree that even as a universal message that whatever you're doing that is harmful to you, whether it's physically or mentally, because you feel like you have to do that to achieve whatever it is that you're trying to achieve. You see that in Hollywood a lot. You see that in theater and most industries where people feel like if I'm not working the overtime or if I'm not going above and beyond, then I'm not a valued whatever I am in this industry. You're talking about how, don't put yourself through that because you think that getting the title will change your life. And don't do this because, this is not the stigma that you need to have in your mind. Because from a consumer perspective, from my perspective, watching a pageantry, we all get the end polished result, which
Mhm,
is all of you guys showing us the final, the final presentation of what you're doing. As someone that does it all the time from, I don't even could say start to finish, but as someone that's in this industry all the time, without sounding insulting, what is the point? What are you obtaining from this as an experience? If not for the title,
mhm.
which obviously is desirable, but what are we working for in the pageantry industry to obtain from it?
Mhm. So with MEO specifically, there's the 5 pillars of the crown. It's kind of supposed to be 4, but there's an honorary 5th. So it's service. So it's service-based scholarship. So scholarship is the second point. There's success, and then there's style. So that's a big part of it. It can be either interpersonally or on stage aesthetics as to how you exhibit yourself on a style basis and showing your identity that way. And then there's sisterhood. So for me, I got into it mainly because I wanted to be a part of something bigger than myself. So I began volunteering under my initial platform, which was actually domestic violence based because I was very anti violent. And I lived in Oklahoma, which was one of the worst ranked states for domestic violent cases per capita. And so that was something that called out to me. But in moving here, I found that I felt more attuned to telling a truer part of my story and helping all survivors of trauma, not just one form of that. And the other thing was scholarship. So, something I do feel comfortable talking about this. I was in a weird spot after my sophomore year of college, and I was facing possible homelessness and a lot of food insecurity. And I knew that if I did not continue my higher education, I would never get back to it. I was struggling with a lot of stuff in my personal life, and I was like, I need to just pedal to the metal and put in the work to make sure that I get my degree. And one of the avenues for that was service based scholarship through the Miss America organization. So I went in and telling them that, like, these are the things I'm facing, but these are a lot of girls that are in this organization are facing hard stuff and they deserve to have a place here. And they deserve to receive scholarship, especially when it's merit-based. So, I think that that's what I got the most out of it was community service and scholarship. Getting my higher education was one of the hardest things I've ever done, but
Yeah.
I'm sitting here now with a degree, which is
Hey.
insane. I think like 4 years ago, I was like, I don't know if I can manage this. I don't know if I can emotionally handle it." So, being able to be on the other side of that now, it's really cool to have that accomplishment, and the Miss America organization played a big part in that.
Awesome. You mentioned sisterhood, which
Mhm,
I could appreciate. My whole life, I've done best when I've had a group of people.
mhm.
As a kid, I was homeschooled as a kid, loved being homeschooled, a little lonely. Then you
Yeah.
get into then I was in Boy Scouts, and that was such a transformative time for me because I went from basically no one to consistently being around 40 other kids my age, right? All the way
Mhm,
until, like Alcoholics Anonymous when I was in recovery. Would not have been able to do it on my own,
mhm.
regardless of your preference of method. Having a community there was important. So I'm curious to know because I feel like a lot of times people have opinions on whether or not their community is communitying enough. Do
Yeah.
you feel like that concept of sisterhood is embraced to its fullest potential, or maybe some of you are kind of like trying to remind the others about a really important point on the crown?
Yeah.
How is the culture in in the industry with sisterhood? How much is it embraced, and by how many?
I think that it's embraced by most, and that was something that was surprising because I went into it thinking that these girls were just gonna be my competitors and they were gonna want nothing to do with me. I'm gonna be honest, I came into competition feeling a little bit white trash, a little country bumpkin, as they call it. And so I didn't feel that I fit in, but it was great to hear all these girls, especially my rookie year when I was competing in Oklahoma. I'd never been at a state competition before, and literally just being backstage and be like, "I don't know what to do for this spot. I don't have a stage presence. How do I get that? How do I um captivate people? How do I talk about this certain topic in interview?" And having the girls around me just not only be supportive, but kind of be oh my gosh, so corny, but the sisters that I'd always needed around me. One of my closest friends within pageantry, Macy Eminger, I remember the week of competition sitting there talking with her until 2 a.m. about my interview and how I wasn't sure of how I came across or if I talked about things in the most powerful way I could have. And she was like, "But that's not the point. One, this is the learning experience, but also two, you're putting yourself out there." And just like validating that I went outside of my comfort zone for something that is bigger than myself, like going and putting in the work to help other people. And so that was really cool because I think a lot of people put a lot of stakes on winning when in actuality it's about winning the experience. And the girls play a big part in that.
In my opinion, that's the biggest plus to mentorship is in anything is the preconceived notion when you get in, you can't help it. I don't care how emotionally intelligent or observant you are, you come in with an idea about why you're doing this at all.
Mhm.
And my favorite thing to hear from any mentor is that's not the point. Because I know that I'm about to have a truth bomb dropped on me that that I'll at least have some insight into why this has been worth it for them for the X amount of years longer they've done it than I
Mhm.
have. So that's really cool to hear. I was gonna ask you, kind of already answered, but I was curious like how prominent a mentorship kind of role is. Like obviously there's a fellowship or a sisterhood within the industry, but in sports, for instance, you often find a lot of times that there are kind of like almost assignments that develop between one another. That happens a lot. I mean, in a lot of recovery programs, you have like sponsors. Is there a sense where a 1-in-1 ratio where you guys kind of end up pairing up a little bit together?
I think it depends on the state. Connecticut isn't one of the larger states geographically, so I mean, statistically, we're gonna have less competitors than some of the larger states. Um, but I think that's kind of a positive because 'cause you're a little more tight-knit with all the girls anyway, and you get to know everyone in detail, whereas when I was in Oklahoma, there was, I believe, 50 girls-ish? So it's a little difficult to get to know everyone on a personal level, but you try your best. And obviously they had a no phone meal policy. So when we were eating dinner, it forced us to actually like interact with each other rather than the running joke of like being the iPad kid and just watching YouTube video on our phones
Yeah.
while we're eating. So that was something that I think was helpful in socializing with everyone. Because the Miss America organization is national, it's easy to build that sisterhood into mentorship. So a lot of people that I went to school with are friends of a friend. They became my mentors within this organization. So Landry Champlin, she went to my college. I didn't really interact with her much while we were at school, but we've grown to be really good friends, and she's one of my mentors. Sunny Day, she was the outgoing Miss Oklahoma when I competed that one year in Oklahoma while I was there for college, and she has a very similar story to me, and so it was really cool to feel seen in a state title holder and see that you can go to Miss America and your circumstances don't have to define you. And then the last one I would say that isn't amongst people that were also delegates at the same time as me is Maggie Bond. She competed for years in the Miss America organization. She didn't end up getting a state title, but she made such an impact, and now her community service initiative is her career. So she helped people with autism and also some other intellectual disabilities, and partnered with Best Buddies for her platform. And now she does a bunch of engagement for them and works there as her full-time career.
Well, for many, many years, but very recently, world culture has began to put a huge spotlight on inclusivity and equality. And while most of us are very open to that, the world in general is kind of divided and having to drag its feet to make sure that it keeps pace with um, everybody that demands to be seen and represented equally. In an industry that most people from the outside looking in would say is like the epitome of what used to be one size fits one, to where the organization is today and all the facets of the organization. How is Miss America, Miss USA, Miss Teen USA, all of these, sections of it doing with keeping up with inclusivity and equality and making sure that, this new tone that the nation, that the world is taking matches, in pageantry?
I think that they are making progress. I don't know if you saw, but the Miss USA system had their first state title holder on the teen level with Down syndrome. That was a really big deal. Uh, I think that
That's
there's
awesome.
there's really there's no limitations with being a title holder, in my opinion. I mean, PTSD is categorically a disability, just like any others would be
Hmm.
categorized as one. I don't think that that makes me any less capable of being a title holder, and nor should any other disability or yeah, I don't think any other disability should make you less privy to what it takes to be a title holder or less capable of handling it. I mean, everybody knows their limits. If they weren't capable, they wouldn't try.
Right. I agree. I agree. Yeah, I guess my question was like, how, because that's most certainly how it presents itself. And you're our insider for the day. And I was curious if, because a lot of times, how the outward projection is of what is offered does not necessarily match the internal mechanics of how it, functions and how accessible it is or whatever. So that's good to hear, though. That's
Mhm,
good to hear. And I think a lot of people may have their own bias of pageantry anyway.
mhm.
I did for, a long time, like in high school, when that's all I knew about it was that it was, girls that went up on stage. And I've learned so much in the course of that time, um, about the substance behind it and the, what each individual gets out of it and what they bring to the world once they are involved and, once they leave.
Mhm.
A post pageantry world is like a whole nother conversation that I'm sure you have a million things to say about, but
Yeah.
the impact that occurs after pageantry and the life that awaits you afterwards is huge. So
Mhm.
I think it's cool to hear how affirming that is to, what I've learned and what other people might not know. I really like that. I would love to hear more about, you're in this new life and you're thriving. Um, a lot of people want that. What are some tools and strategies and things that you use to recharge or to heal yourself, or what works for you in a healthy state of being?
So much therapy. I can't even lie to you. So much therapy. But
Yeah,
it's been
it
really
helps for
great.
sure.
Oh, 100%. I I'm somebody that I have a hard time going out and socializing despite being extroverted, and going out of my way when I'm feeling down. So therapy also kind of forces me to have some interpersonal reactions and interactions, and oh, okay. So it gets me back into the swing of things, gets me feeling more like myself. But also, I started dialectical behavioral therapy, life changing. Literally love it. I did not recognize how many of my habits were so deeply ingrained in my brain, and it literally for the first few weeks of really putting in these exercises and implementing them into my life, I remember them being so difficult. I I was crying like a baby in my car and I was like, "Why do I feel like I'm regressing?" I'm But the truth is like growth is not linear. And so
Yep.
recognizing how to implement these and being okay with like some days are going to be awful, but it's that idea. I don't know if you watch Cinema Therapy. They're a YouTube
I
uh
do not.
film review. Yeah, there's like a therapist and a filmmaker and they talk about the psychology behind film.
Oh, I've seen they have clips. I've seen some
Yeah.
clips every now and then. Yeah, yeah.
A big thing that Jono talks about is how it's hard until it's not. It's really difficult to implement these new habits and get yourself on a healthier track, but eventually it becomes innate and you start to be able to regulate yourself more, and that's super rewarding. Like even things as quote unquote remedial as like tip skills, which is a way that you manage emotional regulation. A lot of people learn this very early. I didn't I wasn't raised in the normal childhood, so I don't
Mhm.
know how to emotionally regulate myself. And so it may feel a little goofy at first putting like a cold pack on your head and going and doing push-ups while you're mid meltdown, but it truly has help and it helps you learn to manage things a little bit more. So tip skill is my holy grail. Um, but oh my gosh, the first week that you are feeling all of your emotions and not avoiding them, it is painful. You will have some of the roughest days, but it will be so rewarding when you get to a point where you feel that emotion again and you're like, huh, I don't feel like I'm gonna have a meltdown.
Yeah. I it's you do feel silly at first. I remember in therapy, one of the things that my homework, right, was I was required to I had to it in moments of intense emotion, I had to physically out loud say what it is that I was feeling, but it was only allowed to be one sentence, and it she was like, the less words you use, the better. And so I would sit there and say, I am mad because I have too much to do. Well, like, I feel so dumb, but it really did help because a lot of times, whatever that core statement was would just digress into something chaotic and ugly. And
Yeah.
just to have that kind of simple childlike, I'm mad because this isn't working out was
Yeah.
enough for me to ground it. So
Mhm.
I 100% agree. Um, the therapists are the biggest culprits of giving you things that make you feel dumb until they don't.
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
also nice though to be like mid-exercise and kinda give yourself a giggle when you realize you're like, "Oh, haha." I'm like I was crying a moment ago and now I'm doing push-ups, like the most random thing in my life, but I somehow feel better.
It's an equal and added bonus, right?
Yeah.
Uh, yeah. Mind you, it's maybe not as big as you thought it was.
Mhm.
Whatever it was at the moment. I love that. You have so much in your future going for you that is I know is gonna be really cool. I have a lot of questions about it, but, just from your own words, what are you most looking forward to in the things that you have coming up? And we can talk more about like specific projects and plug things, at the end, because I want people to know what you have going on. But is there just anything that really makes you buzz right now, with knowing where your future's going?
I am on the next gen board for NAMI, and I feel like this is a big opportunity for me to not only talk about the stigma surrounding mental health, but also show people that you are allowed to lead with mental health conditions.
Mm,
And that's something that is kind of life changing for me because I thought when got my diagnoses, I thought that these were gonna limit me, and these were gonna keep me from accomplishing not only what I wanted to, but also being a role model for others. Because I was like, "You can't take advice from somebody who's struggling, can you?" But in actuality, we're all struggling on some level, and I don't think mental health conditions are an exception of that. So being able to go into Surf for NAMI and hope to grow their programs, that's something that I never thought I would be able to do, especially for an organization that serves people like me. I thought that I could only be the recipient of that and never be a part of the change.
I'm glad you made a point to, kind of call out the argument of the blind leading the blind, which is what we hear very frequently
Mhm.
about how, you can't form a community of people that have experienced mental health struggles because they'll implode, they'll destroy each other.
Yeah, which you guys are literally the antithesis of that. Like,
Yeah.
peer support is real and what you guys do on a digital level too. There are people who can't make it out of bed for a peer support group, and that's what you guys
Mhm.
provide is that opportunity to do it no matter where you're at or what level of progress you've made, and that's something that's admirable. There were days that I didn't make it out of bed for really anything other than occasionally getting myself a couple bags of dry cereal to eat from my bed.
Yeah.
So, and like that's the reality of mental health conditions is sometimes it can be debilitating. And so providing resources to meet people where they're at is important.
It's one of the reasons we were so excited is, we started looking into and we're like, "Oh my gosh, she's with Nami." Like,
Yep.
we're such big fans, you know?
Mhm.
We love the work that they're doing, what you're doing. I want to, I want you to, let people know about things that you're doing, but I had one final question for you. Regardless of what you do, I have this like version of you in my head where you start, your own company for pageantry. I've already done it several times in my head. So, assuming this happens, right? You have your own pageantry industry. What do you bring along from what works, and what do you bring that's a change?
I think that what I would want to bring would be the community part of it. And that's something that can be difficult when you're competing amongst these other girls, but it's important to recognize the value of that community over things like winning and losing. I'm a big believer in if you aren't doing something because it's fun anymore, then you've lost the original point. So that's the element I would want to bring. And on the flip side of that coin, what I wouldn't want to bring is the idea that your competitors are your enemies. Not many people have this ideal in MAO, but it is something that I think some people struggle with on an individual level, when in actuality, those are the people that can best support you. And those are the girls that have supported me. They're the ones that encouraged me to go out and do more community service. They're the ones that encouraged me to go out and make a difference. And that's the element that I wouldn't want to bring is the idea that competitors are enemies.
Load it. Strength and community. Absolutely love it. Michaela, tell us about, Mariposa Project. What's going on? What's new for you? What to look out for? Where to find you? Anything you want people out there to know?
Perfect. Okay, so we have the mariposaproject.com. That is the website that I am well, it's out and built, but I'm adding to it as I can. I'm hoping to put out some different journals that are based within research surrounding overcoming trauma. I am hoping to collaborate with some different mental health facilities and also doing a bunch of NAMI presentations and tabling So that should be on there, as well as I would love to come in and bring my Friends in Respect presentation into some young children environments. A lot of times, heavy topics like abuse, violence, these are not appropriate for younger kids. But what they can learn is problem solving skills, and it's got the big scary name, but anger management. It's truly just
Mm.
about compromise. And when I tell you, kids love new words. So teaching them words like compromise and catharsis, they're like, "Oh my gosh, that's awesome." So, I would
Yes,
love
they
to
do.
bring that in. Yes, 100%.
Yeah.
And, other than that, you can follow me on Miss Nutmeg CT on Instagram. That's my title holder page, or my personal one is Childs Michaela. It's spelt like Michaela. Don't know why I have such a strange spelling, but that is where you can find me. But hopefully, you guys will be seeing me at a lot of NAMI appearances soon, and getting ready to make a big difference that way.
Terrific. We're looking forward to it. Michaela Childs, everyone. It was fantastic having you here to talk with us, sharing your story and giving us some a really good insight into, not only your own recovery, but how the Miss America, Miss USA industry and pageantry industry has, influenced that. So thank you so much for hanging out with us today.
Thanks
And
for having me.
we'll be back again soon. Thank you guys for listening. All right, everyone, that was our episode for today. And as always, it was great to spend time with you and our guests while hearing another incredible true story of mental health. Never forget that you are not alone. The White Flag app is a place for free, anonymous, peer-to-peer support where you can connect with others, help or be helped, and share your amazing stories and journeys just like the ones that you hear on the show. You can check out White Flag on the App Store and Play Store or learn more at whiteflagapp.com. Thanks again, and we will see you next time.